Welcome back. Here to the Jordy Culotta Show. Driven and powered by Go Chevrolet. Remember our friends over there at GEAUXChevrolet.com, GoChevrolet.com. Billy Embody, great stuff, talking the latest on recruiting. It is right now recruiting season, as you heard Embody talking about all the evaluations that's going on for LSU football right now. They are handing out offers. They're evaluating talent throughout camps. They're looking at future classes right now. He broke all of that down in our last segment. Remember, you can check all of it out. Brought back to you by R&B Builders. Let's jump to our next insider, and that is Brody Miller from The Athletic. He covers LSU.
Very inside.
Yes.
He knows everything now.
He is. He's one of the best. You've got to get your subscription over at The Athletic and rocking a new look here on this summer day. Welcome in, Brody. Good to see you, buddy.
Call us on Rooster.
He's still laughing.
Good to see you guys. Yeah, I'm rocking a little bit of my my Top Gun love here.
Yes.
I shaved this as a joke yesterday, and then I came out, the shower, and my girlfriend shockingly was like, "I don't hate it," and I'm like,
Right.
"I am gonna ride that every second I can."
Nice.
Yeah. Until
little
I
Brody.
get laughed out of a room, which I might be already on this
Nope.
show,
I like
I'm
it.
gonna let it ride. So thank you. I
Yeah,
need that.
I like
Nope.
it.
So yeah, I'm gonna let it go. You know?
We're unanimous. We're a go, bro.
Yeah.
Keep it.
Yeah,
Roll with
Brody,
it.
I need some
I've
people
wanted
in
one my
camp.
entire life. I've wanted one my whole life, but I can barely grow a beard. So this is the closest I've ever gotten
nice.
to really being able
It's
to.
always a good day. That happened for
Yep.
me at 14.
Do you want a medal? That's so
No,
cool,
no,
Jordy.
no.
God.
Yeah.
I don't. But I mean, my disciplinarian was telling me to shave in 8th grade. I thought it was I thought it was kind of like welcome to manhood. Brody, we talked about the story with Stephanie Repp early on. This is a huge story for LSU athletics. I think anybody who has covered or followed LSU sports, you get an idea of what she means overall to the department. She's had her hand in everything of every new personnel that has come through there and a lot of the policies and procedures that have been put in place over the last 4 years. What do you make of this story?
Yeah, I always go back to Scott Woodward's first press conference ever at LSU, and he told everyone, he said, as an athletic director, I view myself more as like an executive producer in Hollywood. And he talked about, like, I like to put the pieces in place and and I think as we've gotten to know the Woodward regime more the last 3 years, I think a lot of what he's alluding to is Stephanie Repp. I mean, it's not a secret. Stephanie Repp ran a lot of that athletic department, and that's not a dig at Woodward. That's what he thinks he's very good at, and that's kind of how he delineates. But Stephanie Repp is involved in almost everything. I mean, she in a lot of ways was like another athletic director. And I mean, you go back to every coaching hire, we can get into that, her large role there. But, every problem that came up, whether it be the issues with diversity in the athletic department and the issues with handling of social justice, she was the one putting together the racial climate survey and launching, more of a diversity program in athletics. That was this huge ordeal at LSU and the behind the scenes. That was her. Or a lot of the handling of the problematic sexual assault handling issues of the last decade. She's the one handling that. I mean, business, things like that. She is the one really handling so much of the day-to-day. And yeah, every single time there's a new hire at LSU, the second person that gets mentioned by that coach when they get hired is Stephanie Repp, because she's the one who, to some extent, is on the phone with them the most. I know Kim Mulkey talked at length, I remember even aside, just about how, she probably wouldn't be at LSU if it wasn't for all the constant phone calls with Stephanie, just kind of picking her brain and getting reassurances and all that. So she is a massive part of this athletic department in a way most don't even really know. And, this is, again, Scott Woodward is a very good athletic director. I am sure he's going to hire someone very good and they're going to be fine. But it is going to be fascinating in a small way because his entire career as an athletic director, from Washington to A&M, now LSU, has been with Stephanie Repp. So it's just going to be interesting to see, I don't know, what changes or how he kind of pivots, things like that, because it's going to be new for him too.
Katie asked me this earlier, and I when I answered, I thought, he's got to have the short list in order, right? I mean, he's got to have had to have been anticipating this just by giving her this responsibility that he has in College Station in Baton Rouge. He knew it was going to attract attention, right?
You would think so. I mean, I remember even going back to 2019, the title season. I was coming out of an airport and I saw her, and then I found out she was flying to interview for the Cincinnati AD job in 19. She's been up for jobs for years. And so you would think they have a plan in place. You would think, shoot, I bet Stephanie Repp had a part in figuring out who possibly, that's me talking out of my behind, but I bet you've had a part in figuring out who what replacements might be. But it's LSU. It is one of the biggest athletic department jobs in the country. Plus, word gets around into it. I bet there's even an element of I bet people in the industry know that at LSU, Scott Woodward's going to give you, the keys to cook a little bit, just based on Stephanie's history. So again, this is all speculation. It's almost a weirder world than, coaching searches where you kind of know all the moving pieces and you could be like, watch for that guy. I'd be lying to you if I'm like, I'm hearing great things out of New Mexico's, or whatever. I don't know, but I do think they probably have something lined up sooner than later.
Brody Miller is the writer over at The Athletic. Make sure you follow his work at Brody A. Miller on Twitter. And if you have not gotten the subscription to The Athletic, you need to. I love the mailbag segment, and it's titled on something that's going on right now. And you can read the latest mailbag segment that's up over at The Athletic under the LSU tab. Is LSU focusing too much on out-of-state recruits right now? Is the height of recruiting season. We talked to Billy Embody earlier in the hour just to get the latest on what has happened in the latest of these camps. What have you heard coming out of this camp circuit that LSU has been on over the last 2 weeks? And how do you feel about their approach in recruiting from a national to local standpoint?
Yeah, and I know you guys had Billy on, and I will defer to Billy on so many things. He's the expert. Shoot, when I'm at these camps, I'm usually standing by him and trying to get his evaluations and things. But yeah, I think my read on that situation is, I think, and the question even framed it correctly, right? They're like, does it appear like that with quotations around it? Because I think it's a little bit of just how it appears. I do not think LSU is focusing, is diverting its efforts away from in-state recruiting or anything like that. I think a lot of their effort is going toward your Shelton Sampsons or your Osberries and your Tackett Curtises, all these guys. Like, they are putting that effort in. Those Lance Hurd, they're putting that. Those are priorities. I just think it's context matters, right? I think, one, they were entering a cycle that, to no fault of their own, they were behind with a lot of these Louisiana guys, whether it be the quarterbacks or Curtis, so many of these guys, or Derek, losing Corey Raymond, hurt with Derek Williams, things like that. So I'm not sure I'm sitting here that even if they do hypothetically miss on some of these guys, that, by the way, I'm not saying they are, if they do miss on them, I'm not sure that is inherently an indictment on the Kelly regime yet. Maybe you judge them a little harder on 2024 when it's really their recruiting cycle. But also, there's a context of they hired a staff that had a lot of national relationships. Jamar Cain was at Oklahoma. He's been recruiting nationally on the D-line at an elite level, man, for years. So when 2023 came around, he had those relationships. You're not going to just deny them. Or, a quarterback, okay, you're not getting any of these top two guys. Joe Sloan has done a really good job of building relationships nationally. Or Robert Steeples, his relationship in the Midwest, Mike Denbrock. So I just think the context matters, that it's not like LSU is like, we're skipping Louisiana. The sense I get is they're also just tapping into good relationships they have for guys they think they have a chance with, and they're absolutely putting their focus on Louisiana. And shoot, I might find out I'm wrong about that, but that's just the sense I've got.
Yeah. Would it be fair to say that this year might be an anomaly for what LSU is doing in terms of, like you said, they're bringing in a whole new staff where they already had relationships in recruiting, and that you would expect them to pick the cycle up and kind of build the fence, as a former coach like to say, around Louisiana?
That's a really, really good question, because I think to some extent they do. I mean, LSU, Ogeron had success with this too, right? It is a national brand, and I think they are tapping into that. And I do think they do see value in having a staff that, yes, has 4 or 5 Louisiana experts, but also has 4 or 5 guys that really own other areas around the country too, at the point we mentioned, whether it be the Midwest or the West Coast. Like, you do want a little bit in the middle, probably, right? So I think the answer to your question is, yeah, it might be a little less national focus in the future. I think that's fair, but I don't think they want to punt on those kind of relationships they're going to develop, because I think they see the value in both. Because, yeah, there are going to be years like this year isn't necessarily an amazing D-line year in Louisiana, so you need to be able to figure other things out. So I think the middle ground is the coward answer there.
We had Joe Sloan in the studio last week. He sat down with us for nearly 45 minutes and really gave us some in-depth on where he's come from, his expectations for this LSU job, and the quarterback room. You had a really in-depth piece on him, a really great read over at The Athletic. What'd you learn about Sloan? What does he add to this staff, in your opinion?
He's the mayor, man. And that's a lot of what the story tried to get into, is like, it's just funny how much this new coach at LSU, but he's obviously not new to Louisiana, They literally call him the mayor or the politician. Like, this guy just knows everybody and has relationships with everybody, which is even more impressive because he's a guy from Virginia and went to ECU. I don't think he came in Louisiana Tech in 2014 and has become a really well-connected Louisiana guy, not just a quarterback, positions all around. But I think the things that really fascinated me, for lack of a better word, learning about him and working on this piece was kind of, the way he's built himself. And you've been around a long time, right? There's coaches who are really good coaches but aren't, like, thinking about being head coaches. I think Dave Aranda comes to mind, right? Or there's so many examples of that. They're amazing at their job. That's just not what they're thinking about. And I think Joe Sloan's one of those guys that absolutely, like, he is mapping it out. He spent all those years with Skip Holtz, who's a very obviously successful head coach for years, learning everything he could about roster management, academics. Shoot, he literally had to run the academic department because they had no academic advisors for a year or two there. And he basically just built it from the ground up and was the academic advisor. I think that's a huge plus. Or, he learned how to build an offense. I think he's a guy who is even though I think he'd be a good coordinator, and I bet that's in his future if he wants it somewhere soon, I think he's a guy who honestly might more likely be a head coach sooner than later and kind of build his way up that way. But he's a fascinating dude who is very kind of control freaky, loves to be on top of things and run everything and run it his way and all that. So, and I think you need a handful of guys in any program that are like that.
Expectation is starting to build for LSU going into this offseason and into the summer months. We'll see SEC Media Days in a couple of weeks. What do you anticipate the expectation to be for LSU once the entire media from the conference is surrounded by one another? Have you thought where you would place your vote? I guess it's still a couple of weeks out, but where LSU would kind of fit into the pecking order of the SEC West at this point going into next year?
Yeah, it's almost impossible. And honestly, even further than that, I feel like it's going to be, and tough me, I have to just get better at my job, but it's going to be so hard to predict teams from now on because we live in a time where a third of every roster is changing each year or more. And it's like, half of LSU starters are going to be transfers. You have to, like, kind of guess, like, which transfers are going to work out because, as I've said in the show over and over, the hit rate on transfers is never going to be 100%. It's a huge transition in their life. Like, there's going to be some weirdness there. So I've been over and over saying I think LSU is good enough on the right day to beat anyone except maybe Alabama. They have that top talent, and they have the depth issues that the uncertainties, things like that also you're going to lose some games on the wrong night to a Mississippi State or something. So I've always said I think 8-4 is the right expectation. If you win 8 games after 2 years of 11-12, that's a pretty good sign. I think that's a sign that you are headed the right direction. Next year could be even better. But LSU could be favored in 10 of 12 games. That's not unrealistic. So if you ask me where I'd put them in a pecking order when we're putting our votes for the SEC West, I think in my gut I put them after A&M. I think it goes Bama, A&M, LSU, but you could totally convince me that Arkansas is going to keep that rolling. They have a really deep roster this year, things like that. I just think LSU is going to be volatile, not in a bad way. Just it's going to be a little really high highs and some frustrating weeks.
Who do you bet they take? You got any names early on who they take the SEC Media Days? I got Jack Besh and BJ O'Leary.
Ooh, great question.
No way they bring
Besh seems
volatile in a good way.
No, you're right. Yeah, Besh. Yeah, that's fair. No comment. That's a great question. I think they trust Brennan a lot, but then you bring Brennan, it comes with the question
Open
of,
yourself
like,
up.
you're in a 3-man quarterback competition. Right. Ooh, that's so good. I'm going to say Mike Jones.
That's a good one. That's a good one.
But you can't go all defense because, like, Ollie Gay would make a ton of sense.
Yeah.
I think Ollie Gay is probably even more likely than Mike Jones. Ooh.
Austin Deculus.
Offensively,
just let him
go. Let's let Liam Shanahan get back out there, talk again. Offensively, I think I'm going to say Miles Brennan. I just think they trust him to handle that. But, man, that is Great question.
Enjoy the rest of the day, bro. The stash looks great. I would maybe go one more button unbutton for lunch.
Yeah.
Just say, I mean,
To be fair, the way my camera is low right now, so it looks even lower than it is.
Yes. One more button.
That's the drapes. One more button. One more
The
button.
best part is I'm dressed like summer, but it's 110. I'm not leaving the house. So like, who am I kidding here?
Board shorts.
Thanks, guys.
Later, buddy. See ya.
Get out of here.
He's like, bye, don't ask me
Later.
more questions. Stop telling me to take my
Brody
clothes
Miller
off.
from The Athletic. Get your subscription today. Read his work. It is it's fantastic. And